Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Maximum Octane. I am your ringleader, Kim Hickey, and joining me today is Mr. Mike Bennett, a dear friend and colleague, and he is a facilitator for some of the most intelligent and progressive CEOs in the country and our industry. So welcome, Mike. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Kim. As always, it's fantastic to be here with you and wonderful to see you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. So you've been doing some pretty exciting things with your CEO groups and the COO groups and that. And I want to take a little bit of time because I think people have a confusion in their mind about what is a CEO and, what's the difference between a business owner and thinking like a business owner and then really thinking like a CEO and acting in that role.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, the CEO is just an evolutionary step, from a business owner, in almost all cases, especially as it relates to, industries with the size and the scope that ours does in the automotive industry. Typically, our owners rise up from the ranks. They're a technician, they're a service advisor, or in some cases, in a retirement plan, buy into an automotive shop, and they kind of raised to the level of ownership. And the common thread for the most part that kind of exists there is they come from the very operational level, right? In other words, they're very involved integrally. Thank you. Got to get the word out cleanly. In the daily operations, the doingness of the business. And as the shop owner, it's an evolutionary step that we're still very much either involved directly or indirectly with the operations. But more importantly, is it tends to be our focus. It's kind of the place where our attention and our vision is focused. And therefore, it kind of really keeps us as business owners in the present and in the near future, right? We're very focused on the right now and what's happening and what do I need to do to make sure that next week or next month is, okay and good and we're on plan. Which is very much the common position of a lot of foundational entrepreneurs and small business owners, right? We're very focused on what's happening in our business right now and in these moments. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But from an evolutionary point of view, we see some of our business owners that kind of evolve past that, and they become very focused on looking at it from a very forward-looking and visionary point of view. They're growing the organizational structure to the point where that operational level is really handled well around them and underneath them. And so the opportunity really exists to kind of create that what next level for the small business owner. And it's really, quite honestly, one of the things that we look at in the CEO program and really try and create the transition with our focus is understanding just kind of the change of perspective. Instead of being the leader and the owner of what's now and what's present, it's really about being the owner and the visionary of what's next. And really kind of getting that vision up and forward so that we can really start to stretch ourselves into a consideration of what's down the road, where might my business exist and how might we play and succeed and grow over the next 3, 5, or 10 years, and allow the operational structure that we've created to really take care of itself and self-manage. So one of the primary foundational things that we really look at with our CEO program is helping our business owners really transition into that CEO mentality, which is really, quite honestly, a change of perspective. Really looking forward and getting to the point where we're becoming visionary in a forward-looking view. So
that's huge switch to flip for most entrepreneurs. We're in the trenches. We're the ones doing everything. We're doing the billing. We're doing the creating. We're doing the marketing. We're doing the labor work and trying to figure everything out. And then you become such a part of all of those positions as you hire, as you grow, as you do those things. It's so hard to get out of that mindset, and change, say, wow, I got to look forward now. And I have to, empower and trust in the people that I've put underneath me. I've hired them for a reason. I've given them all the proper training and everything they need. I need to let go and then look towards the future, or else you're always going to be on that treadmill, right? Of just going in the same over and over and over and over again. And it growth becomes impossible after a while when you're constantly on that treadmill. You can only get so far with those practices, right?
Yeah, very much so. And really, kind of what you described is actually what I kind of refer to as that entrepreneurial trap, right? And so, we get ourselves to a point where we, start to hire and empower people, right? We put people in what we consider roles and positions where, they have the responsibilities to really own and drive the day. But one of the key pieces that oftentimes we miss, as entrepreneurs that are trying to elevate ourselves, is the key piece in really being able to make that disconnect. And it's quite honestly, you got to get out of the way, right? It's as simple as, I listened to a quote by what I consider the great Indra Nooyi. And for those that don't recognize the name, Indra Nooyi was the CEO for Pepsi Cola, for Pepsi Corporation, for I think 2006 through 2019. Very, very successful, very accomplished Fortune 500 CEO. As a matter of fact, I believe she was one of 11 female CEOs for Fortune 500 companies, and had such a long, storied and successful career. But one of the things that Indra said that I thought was just so revolutionary is she talked about the responsibility of a CEO to elevate themselves and therefore give the opportunity for their business to elevate underneath of them. And the quote was, to paraphrase it, was, number two can never surpass number one. In other words, the business can only grow as fast as the CEO's willingness to get out of the way. And the most important thing is you have to elevate yourself through education and through increasing skill level to get out of the way of your organization and allow your organization to elevate itself underneath you. How do you get it to assume that responsibility? You got to get out of the way. You empower them and let them grow themselves into those increased roles and functionality. And really that has become kind of the foundation of our CEO program. It's really about that effort for that last paradoxical step, right? Is how do I get out of the business? You got to get out of the business, right? You've done all the hard work. You've hired the right people. You've got great systems and processes, and you have all the things in place. And the reason it doesn't go is because you've stayed in the room. You absorb all the oxygen, and you really don't give your organization a place to expand itself and increase its ability. And really, honestly, that's the thrust of our program is facilitating that change in mentality, for our CEOs, and kind of by growing them, allowing their organizations to grow and develop underneath of them. So it's really quite exciting to watch as we see these CEOs elevating themselves through education, through practice and advancement and self-improvement, and creating the space, and just naturally watching the organizations grow underneath them, almost like bread rising. It's been fascinating, and for our CEOs, very very gratifying to watch it occur.
I know that you really enjoy that, and you're always just on watching some of the successes and the transformations of some of the CEOs. What are some of the things that somebody can do right now if they're trying to break out of that and they're just in that day to day and they're like, I want to think on a higher level, I want to improve myself? What are some tips that you have for them?
Well, I think one of the things, and gosh, there's so many places we could go with that question. It's a fantastic question. We could probably spend, several conversations talking about it. But one of the things that I think is important is a foundational understanding of the role of a CEO, right? And it's quite honestly as broad as the scope of that topic is. Whatever your understanding of leadership is, as CEO, ultimately we are responsible for everything, right? We're held accountable, and we're responsible for the entire performance, output, structure, success the organizations that we run. But when we think about it from a role point of view, it really quite honestly comes down to simplification, right? It's about being better by doing less. And there's lots of great references that really talk about the true roles and responsibilities of a CEO. And I found, several references and there's a lot of commonality to them. It boils it down to, a CEO's basic role boils down to 4 areas of responsibility. And so when we think about what are the first couple of steps, it's about understanding where you can have the greatest impact and spending your time and energy in developing your ability and your touch in these areas. So to answer your question and really kind of speak to, what are the impact points or the important roles of a CEO? First and foremost is you're responsible for setting the strategy and direction of your company. So whether you're thinking about it from right now or envisioning the future, whatever time frame that looks like, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, it's about deciding what business you're going to be in. Where will you go to market? Who will your customers be? How you are going to differentiate yourself from your competition? What businesses you will not be in, which I think is something that's very important. But in the end, it is only a CEO's responsibility, and only a CEO can set the strategy and the direction for the organizations. And that's important, because if you don't have a really solid, impactful, and succinct direction and strategy, the business tends to wander, right? From the perspective of the entrepreneur that's very focused in the near term and the day-to-day, that's kind of one of the foundational trips, right? Because there is no forward-looking vision. A vision is really a destination. If you think of it, the business just kind of wanders along doing what it's always done. They bump into opportunity or into hazard just because it happens to be on the path that they're on. It's not really a plan. You're not on a roadmap. You're not following a strategy. And so that idea of really setting a direction and strategy for your company is the foundational responsibility of a CEO. The second responsibility, which I think is equally as impactful, is about, kind of developing, designing, but most importantly, modeling the culture, the behaviors, and the value of your company, right? And that's really speaks to who will you be? What will your company look like from an interconnected and cultural point of view? How will we operate? What are our best practices, and what's really our personality? How will we relate to each other? What's acceptable behavior? What's not acceptable behavior? And how will our organization interact with the public? And it's so important to understand that, things like culture and behaviors and values are things that have to be modeled, and they have to be demonstrated, and they have to be, really kind of injected into the core of who your organization will be. I mean, all of the strongest business environments are ones that are really founded on strong cultural identity and strong, best practice behaviors and really strong foundational values that become, kind of the barometer and the bellwether of who we are as an organization and how we're going to operate, what we consider good behavior. And all great corporations have a very clear vision of what that looks like. The third responsibility of a CEO is kind of where the first two come together. And it's probably what I consider, as organizations grow, the greatest responsibility and the greatest impact point for a CEO in their organization, because it's the responsibility to assemble and mentor, to grow the leadership team, right? As organizations grow and we move beyond, a handful of 3 or 6 employees, and we get into, whether it's multi-locational or larger staffing levels, we have to acknowledge the fact that, as CEOs, as business leaders and owners, we cannot touch all of our people well, right? We cannot necessarily give all of our employees and associates, the best touch and the best guidance and the best leadership. So our job is to make sure that we're constantly working to develop the people that we put in position to really develop the people that run the business, right? You're mentoring the mentors, you're leading the leaders, right? You're training the trainers, because your ability to kind of touch and impact the entire organization, or at least all of the people in your organization, really comes from those couple of quality relationships that you can have with your leaders and managers. And that's the place that you can really instill those values, the culture, the best behaviors. And it's the point at which you're going to transfer and translate your vision, your mission, and your strategy down through the organization. So quite honestly, that really becomes what I would consider, the primary touch point, between a business leader and the success and the structure, the sustainability of their organization.
I'm glad you
And then,
mentioned, Mike, about to train a trainer and mentor the mentors. And
mhm,
so many times we hear from people, I tried to put leadership in and, they failed or whatever, but that doesn't mean you just walk away and you don't do anything, right? When you make the decision to finally become a CEO and rise to that level, personally and professionally, it's not wash your hands of everything. I hired these people, I told them what to do, and oh my gosh, they're not doing it right. There has to be that constant interaction between them, because it all trickles down, and so many times it's just frustrating to hear, oh, that didn't work. I hired a manager and they didn't do a good job, and they weren't treating the employees the way that I wanted. And so it's like, wait a minute, let's take a step back here. How much training you went in? What was the oversight? How often did you work with them? All of that stuff. And it's like, well, no, I hired them to run it. So what, I shouldn't have to do that. Well, yes, you do. Being a CEO, you still do. So
right,
I'm glad
right.
that you brought that up, that there still needs to be mentoring and training. And if you want them to behave in the manner that fits in with your culture and your direction and your vision, they have to understand what to do and have very clear rules of engagement, for sure.
Yeah, it's funny you ended with those two words, rules of engagement. It happens to be, I'm actually rereading right now a very, what I think is one of the most powerful leadership books. I'm sure you've probably heard of it, Extreme Ownership. And some of the covenant of extreme ownership as it runs the parallels between military leadership and business leadership, specifically SEAL team leadership, is this concept of extreme leadership. And when we talk about, from business leaders' point of view, and we have plans, or we put people in position to be leaders, and then it doesn't work out, and you made the comment, oh, I put them in place and they didn't do their job, or we did this thing and it didn't work out, we had this strategy and it didn't get executed. It's amazing how we hear business leaders make that exact comment, and it screams in the face of this idea of extreme ownership, right? It's the idea that as a leader, whether that's you and as the lead of the organization, or managerial department leaders, I mean, the ultimate success or failure in any area is nobody's responsibility but yours, right? As the CEO, it is ultimately your responsibility, to have those touch points. And it's the quality of those touch points. How well did I lay out the plan, the agenda? How well have I trained people? How well have I communicated, expectations and objectives and so forth? A failure on a leader's, a direct reports area is really a failure of yours, right? And that's one of the things that we talk about quite a bit, is how can we have that most profound impact in a quality way? How can we take extreme ownership of the results of our organization, the results of those that we lead? And it is that level of interaction and leading and mentoring that leadership team that really becomes the point where we get the connection between the CEO, who they are, what they believe, what their values are, what they consider the best behavior. That's how we get it down in. And I think it's so important to acknowledge, that's our primary responsibility, is really working with those folks, for sure.
Absolutely. And that's a wonderful book for anybody that has not read that. There should be a link for it in the comments to this so you can look it up. It's must read, must read. So
It's a must read, and it's actually a really good read. It's one of those books. It doesn't matter how late at night it is when you pick it up. I'm having a hard time putting it down. So yeah, I highly recommend it for anybody who's in the game of trying to up their game in leadership.
absolutely. So share with us, if you will, what is one unproductive habit that you see a lot of our transitioning CEOs going from entrepreneur and owner to truly a CEO? What's one of the unproductive habits that they exchange for a productive one?
Well, I mean, the unproductive habit is going back to doing what they've always done, right? Feeling like they can be a integral and are a necessary part in daily operations, right? It goes back to that idea of our organization can only take on as much responsibility as we're willing to give up, right? We've got to give them the room and the space. And one of the things that we see more often than not is all the best intentioned leaders, all the best intentioned CEOs really have a hard time letting go of the responsibility of the day to day. And they're so tempted to always jump back in and how can I help in that area, when they realize, instead of being part of trying to do it, they can have a better impact by being part of mentoring those who are now going to be able to do it. So it's that transition between, again, instead of it's training the trainer, right? It's mentoring the mentor instead of just going in and doing what the mentor wasn't able to get done. So I hope that makes sense to you. But the biggest challenge that we see with those transitions, between that kind of operational entrepreneur and really moving to, the physical and mental position of CEO is really about learning how to take your hands directly off that throttle and rein, the steering wheel, so to speak, and have the patience and the intestinal fortitude to quite honestly is to kind of step back a little bit and let the organization find that way themselves and use the appropriate touch points to guide those people into making those adjustments for you, rather than feeling like you have to step in and help them with it.
Thank you so much. And there's so many. This is such a huge topic that we'll definitely be visiting this some more with you. So I appreciate your time today. And everybody listen to Mike and get out of the way. Get out of the way and be the trainer to your trainers and the mentor to your mentors and all of that good stuff. And if you haven't picked up or read Extreme Ownership yet, please do that. So thank you, Mike, for joining me today. Everybody stay inspired, stay safe, and make good choices. And I will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kim.